Oh, bummer. The holidays are over. But yay, your weird relatives left. But no more presents. But yay, you have your freedom again. But there are no more desserts. But there's also no more holiday music, huh? The new year is full of ups and downs. But however you're feeling, you can always be happy with all the content on Prime Video. Catch the new season of Reacher, included with Prime.
Why'd you hit him so hard?
I don't hit soft.
Rent or buy new releases like The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. You can even add on hundreds of streamers, all in one app with one password. No bummers here, just lots of yay. Prime Video, find your happy place. Restrictions apply. Prime membership not required to rent or buy. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Are you struggling to conceive? You have options, and at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group, we'll make sure you have the guidance and support you need. PREG is known for individualized fertility care that's unique to every patient. We take the time to provide a reassuring and empowering experience because we believe that you deserve nothing less. Let us help you on your journey to parenthood. Visit us at pregonline.com to learn more. Get the guidance and support you need at Piedmont Reproductive Endocrinology Group.
Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to Movie Film. This is episode 282. It is our last show of 2023. My name is Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
I'm ready to wrap up this year. Not because it's been a bad year, but just because, I'm ready to turn the page.
I 100% have that same sentiment. I don't have any bad feelings about it. That feels nice. Turning the page. Let's do a little refresh and see what 2024 has to offer.
I was planning to get a gym membership. That was my plan for 2024. And then I saw that it's like $350 for a gym membership.
Man, I am so out of touch with that because I haven't been to a gym in forever.
Yeah.
But I had no idea it was so expensive. I mean, I'm literally right now, every time I record, I'm staring at a Peloton bike, which by the way is very cool. And I don't know why I don't use it more often because it's great. I mean, you can
hang all kinds of laundry on it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can pull up something on your iPad if you want. That's how I watched Bloodsport. Actually, was on the Peloton.
And probably the best way to watch Bloodsport.
Yeah. So I mean, it's okay, Zachy. I think we talked about how about resolutions, and I say I don't really do them, but I'm going to make one right here. I'm going to start using that Peloton bike.
Wow. Okay. I will.
There's no excuse. I could listen to podcasts. Even if it's just once a week, which obviously I could do better, but that's a start. That's a start. So what are you going to do then if with the gym thing?
Well, I'm not spending $350 a year for that. That's
sure.
So I gotta. I don't know. I gotta. I mean, it's like we've talked about this before, but I'm like, yeah, I need to get in some semblance of shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
At this point, I'm in my mid 40s, so at this point, it's just triage.
Sure.
I have no illusions about playing Wolverine or anything like that. I'm just I need to not have my gut sticking out in ways that's impeding my ability to get in and out of space. So
all right, sounds good. We'll find it. We'll find it together.
I mean, here's the thing. I was talking about this with my oldest. He's like, "Oh, I want to get a gym membership." I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll go in with you on that." And that was kind of how this started.
Mm.
And my second one, he's like, "You like that, just like that."
Well, that's on brand, right?
It's extremely. So now I'm kind of like, "Oh, I'll show you." But then I pulled up the how much it costs, and I'm like, "I'll show you eventually."
Right.
So we'll see how that goes. But how was your holiday other than all that?
It was great. Had my parents out here. And we always just try to find some fun things to do. So we went to like they have these, outdoor movie screenings called street food cinema. I mean, there's many of them, but we went to that one in particular where during Christmas time they have like these Victorian homes, like a row of Victorian homes blocked off, and they set up, hot chocolate stands and apple cider and pizza and all sorts of things. And there's people singing. You can go in one of the houses and there's literally a guy at the piano, like, what do you want to hear? Here comes Santa Claus. Okay. And then like, just like a room full of people singing, Christmas carols together. And then there's like a little area you can walk through where they spit out fake snow and you can take pictures. And then finally they show a movie, like an outdoor movie, and there's all these seats. So we took our parents there and saw Elf. And,
nice.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then we also went to this place, this restaurant. It's over 100 years old. It's called Tam O'Shanter.
Okay.
And they have these old, I didn't realize how much Victorian era was playing into my holiday this year, but they have these old Victorian era carolers that come table to table and take requests and sing Christmas carols. And it was really fun. I mean, I had heard about this place, but it was really cool to sit down, and I had like a prime rib as their specialty, and they just come up to your table. They have amazing voices, and there's something kind of magical about it. So
did you have a boot black come up to you and shine your shoes?
That would have been hilarious. Hey, mister, like a cough. Can you spare a dime? Yeah. I need to get some medicine for my consumption. And we all just sort of like awkwardly look away because we don't have a tuppence.
You roll up the car window.
Yeah. The Christmas experience at Tam O'Shanter. But no, it was great. And then they just took off. I'm so off on my days this week, but just the other day. And so now it's been that come down, doing laundry, cleaning up sort of thing. So
yeah, the week between Christmas and New Year's is always kind of weird for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your days are off. But this, I don't know, for some reason this year feels even weirder. Maybe because Christmas is on a Monday.
Yeah.
And it feels like your week got shorter in the wrong way. I don't know. It screwed me up anyway.
Yeah, and certainly that. And there's always that weirdness where certain people have to work this week and other people don't.
Yes.
So it's like some people are like, hey, do you want to go do this on Wednesday? And some people are like, oh, I work, or other people, you know what I mean? Like there's this weird, it's not uniform with everybody. So it's this kind of funny, weird week.
But hey.
But hey.
Did you get anything exciting this year?
Oh, yeah. Okay. You know what? We're all friends here. I can tell a story, right?
Go on.
I wasn't going to tell this story, but okay. So look, we're all human beings. We all have the same functions. I was in the bathroom and I was like, all right, well, a way to pass the time here is maybe I listen to something. Okay. And I dropped my AirPod into the
floor. Oh no.
And
oh no.
Look, friends, those things aren't cheap. And so there was a lot of feelings. There was feelings of, oh, damn, I have, it sounds weird, but like a personal connection with those things. They've been around the world with me. I use them all every day. It's probably the thing I use most, my phone and my AirPods.
It's like your own R2-D2.
Wow. Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because with Siri now, I use her so much more than I ever did. When I realized, I don't know if everybody knows this, or they're going to be like, Brian, you just figured this out. But when you're listening to something, you can, and I miss, a sentence that someone says, I'll go, hey, Siri, rewind 10 seconds. And then she just goes immediately back 10 seconds. This is like something I just discovered and I love it. So yes, like R2-D2, it's become sort of a friend and an assistant. But so anyway, I dropped one AirPod. It almost weirdly would be better if I dropped both, but I dropped one down into the abyss, and I sat there like, "Are you kidding me?" Like just losing something that you use all the time, the money that it costs. Anyway, all that said, I couldn't believe it. I told maybe 2 people because I was so frustrated about it.
That number just went up.
Yep. And I was so blessed. My brother and Federica both bought me new AirPods.
Aw.
So it was very thoughtful. And yeah, so that's one of the things I got.
Something to replace your toilet pods. Okay.
Yes.
So be honest, how long did you seriously contemplate reaching into the bowl and grabbing that AirPod?
We're all friends here, right? There was a second, Zach. There was a second. There was an actual quantifiable second where I thought maybe. And then I literally thought, am I actually going to ever put that in my ear and never think about this moment? I was like, you know what? No. And so I had to like, push the handle down and just salute.
Respect. I love it. Hey, this is the end of the year. Nobody's listening right now. Anyway.
Yeah. So I don't know. What about you guys? Do you have like a nice holiday season?
Yeah, it's just chill. It's been relaxing. I and you know this. I got my Indiana Jones jacket.
Yes. Wait, have you talked about this on air yet?
I have not.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, you've got to tell them. This is so cool.
So earlier this year, I got a Indiana Jones style fedora, and this is something that I've been looking into for a while. I've been, I had like for the longest time, I had like a licensed Indiana Jones hat.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like a cosplay hat. It was just a fedora, but it had Indiana Jones branding on it. And it always bugged me because even though this was like the quote unquote official one, it didn't look like the one in the movies. Right.
Like because the size, shape, sort of.
Yeah, the crown was too short. The brim had like a kind of a finish on it that isn't there in the movies. And so it always just bugged me, but it's like, whatever, right? And I had this hat for like 15 years. But I had been periodically looking into like, where can I get like a nice hat that's accurate to the ones in the film? And, this is like you with watches. You're like kind of an expert in watches.
Yeah, and you're like, when you look at them long enough, you sort of know like this is the thing and this isn't the thing.
Yeah, so for me, I've been studying Indiana Jones fedoras long enough where I can tell you, oh, that's from Raiders. Oh, that's the Temple of Doom one. That and obviously anybody who listens to the show knows Last Crusade is going to be my nostalgic favorite always. So I was like, I want like a Last Crusade style hat, and so the hats that the hatters for the films for the first 3 and the 5th film was a company called Herbert Johnson out of the UK, and they make even now you can order Indiana Jones hats from them, and they make them styled based on the specific movies, and these were the people who made them for the films.
Wow,
those are cool. Very cool, but those were like out of my price range. I just thought they were too expensive, Mm-hmm. Maybe one day, but I was like, well, there's got to be like a middle ground, and so there's a place called the Hattery out of Australia, and they have, anybody listening who's interested, it's called the Akubra Federation 4, and this is a virtual replica of what you're going to see in the films, and they can style it for you a certain way, and they shaped it for me so that it looks like the Last Crusade style.
Very cool.
Now the website says specifically, like, we're not saying that we're affiliated with any specific films, but ...
Right.
Covering their bases. But I mean, it's a beautiful hat, and it looks just like the one in the film. So I got that. That's kind of like my birthday present to myself. Earlier this year, and then I was like, I'd like a nice jacket to go with it,
Mm-hmm.
And so I got it from this is the company that they made the jackets for again the first 3 and the 5th films.
Wow. Okay. Wow, it's cool that these companies are still around and that they're able to sort of capitalize on this, like making the exact thing the fan would want.
It's really interesting because they have a whole range of different styles. So the one I got, it's a hero jacket. So it's from Last Crusade, and it's an exact screen replica using the exact pattern.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, and it's extraordinary, and even down to, I found this fascinating. the patch like that goes at the back of the neck. They have a replica patch of the branding that was put on the jacket that Harrison Ford wore.
Oh wow!
So it's a virtual replica in just about every way. And I was like, well, that's cool. You know, they had like a Black Friday deal, and I was like, you know, it was a little, you know, I was out of pocket on it, but I was like, well, how often am I going to buy like a nice leather jacket? Right? You wear those things to last, right?
I completely agree. Like there's certain things that you know you're going to use and you're going to have them for a very long time. And then those are the things that I think are worth investing in.
Yeah, exactly. And so it arrived just before Christmas, and man, I'll tell you, it's a beauty. I love it, you know, and it is interesting because it's you know the leather, like you know what good quality leather feels like, but it's like new, right? And you want this thing to be weathered in order to really evoke
Right.
the film, you know,
Right.
and there's all these videos online about like how to weather a jacket, how to distress it, you know? And I'm like, man, I don't know if I have the guts to do that. I'm like, I'll just get there the old fashioned way.
It would make me nervous because
Yeah, right.
it's like sort of the, I don't know if this relates at all, but the measure twice, cut once sort of thing, you know, where it's
Yes.
like, if you push it too hard, you cannot come back. Right. So I'd be a little
Exactly.
nervous about pushing too hard.
That was my exact thought, but it's a beauty. I'll tell you. Like I said, I'm very happy about it. So I just yeah.
That is so cool. When I've seen pictures and it looks amazing.
And like you said, I mean, it's extraordinary to me that this stuff is out there for fans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When that wasn't the case, you know, 20 years ago or whatever, but obviously they've found that. And I have to imagine that part of this is the onset of the internet age where we have the ability to make purchases from overseas and things like that, you know?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And so they realize, oh, there's a global marketplace for this type of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I love that. I've felt this way starting with Halloween costumes. You know, we've joked when we were growing up, if I wanted to be He-Man, I basically wore what was like the equivalent of a garbage bag, you know, that literally said
With He-Man's
He-Man
face on the
yeah, his face and the words He-Man on the chest. And I'm like, well, He-Man doesn't have his face and his name on the chest. And so and then I look at, you know, your kids and the Halloween costumes they have now, and they're so well done. I mean, the fabrics, and they look just like the costumes from the films, and you know, the toys and the replicas and the things that we have now, and then going right into this where you can go to the original creators of the Indiana Jones hat and jacket and buy the hat and the jacket. I don't remember that always being a thing. It's very cool that stuff's available now.
I think modern life tends to be pretty lousy, but occasionally there's cool things, and I would say buying the original Indiana Jones hats is one of those things, and jackets.
Yeah. Dude, so cool. I can't wait to be out in the wild with you with it.
I know.
With it on. You rock that hat. I mean, you've always been pretty. That's the thing with fedoras. Like, I think they look so cool when I watch movies with, you know, like in the past, and you see gentlemen walking around with fedoras. I always think, man, it just looks so slick and cool, and I just don't feel like everybody can kind of pull it off. But I really do feel like you're one of those people that pulls it off. You've been doing it for a while now. It looks good.
Well, I appreciate that. The other thought I had is that I'm sort of at fedora age now,
Mm-hmm.
where it doesn't, like, I'm old enough where you're like, yeah, that seems like the age of a person who would wear a fedora.
Right, right.
Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just an acknowledgement that, you know, time moves in a linear fashion.
Sure.
But speaking of passing time, I'm assuming people are here to hear us talk about movies and such.
In Sitch. Well, before I get into what I've checked out this past week, I have to mention going back to our "It's a Wonderful Life" conversation, which
Yes.
not just before our Tombstone commentary, we had an episode where we talked to Ray Novoselsky and Ruth Vaca, who had worked on George Bailey Was Never Born, 10-part podcast series that was about sort of the making and legacy and relating it to everyday life that goes on with the classic It's a Wonderful Life. And it was a really awesome conversation we had with them, and had it on the mind. And we even put it on, while we were doing things around the house, and everybody suddenly stops and just begins watching the film. But I had to bring this up because I thought this was so fascinating. One of the things that that podcast, George Bailey Was Never Born, covered was that, and we've talked about many times, there's a weird copyright issue with It's a Wonderful Life where it allowed the movie to be on television all the time. And, they didn't have to pay anyone, but then they figured out that, well, the film itself is not copywritten or trademarked or however that works, but the music is. So that was a way for someone to retain the rights to the film and be like, well, you can't show it because how can you show it without the music? Right. So then I don't know if it's Turner or whoever owns it now, but NBC will show it like once a year, right? Because they somehow acquired the music rights. So I saw this interesting article where this year on Roku, they are showing It's a Wonderful Life, but they have changed the music. So they don't have to pay the royalties.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, no way. So I queued it up just out of curiosity. And what's interesting is the movie starts with what looks like a storybook, and it has the title, and then the page flips, and there's credits. And normally it would say, Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. But in this version, it just says A Wonderful Life. So they digitally manipulated the title, and the music isn't the orchestral, 1946 score. It's this really cheesy, almost, free library, royalty-free music, modern sounding, sincere, dee-dee-dee-dee-doo, kind of thing playing over it. And you're like, what is this? And I just found that absolutely fascinating. I thought that was over. Like we had just decided, well, I guess someone owns it now, and who's really going to manipulate this to try to do? But someone did. And I guess on Roku and Tubi and Pluto and some of those free streaming services, they are showing this manipulated version of It's a Wonderful Life getting around the music issue. Is that crazy?
That does not sound wonderful, Brian.
Well, I was curious how they did it. I mean, how did they get the tracks? How to, maybe AI. I know
these days digitally, they're able to do that. They're able to separate dialogue. And it's crazy that some of the technology is available now.
Yeah, I think that's how the Beatles, recently they put out what they said would be the surviving Beatles, I should say, put out what will be their last Beatles single. And it was from some sort of home recording that John Lennon had made, but they used AI to recognize Lennon's voice and remove anything that wasn't his voice. So they had that singular track, and then they, built around that. So
yeah, wild, man. But you would not recommend this version. It sounds horrific to me.
I wouldn't. I think. I think it's cool that there are those services out there that people don't have to, subscribe to and pay a lot of money. That's why I have a slight hesitation. Like I can appreciate that there are those things and people don't have to drop monthly fees on something, to try to watch TV these days where, network TV used to be free, right? You didn't have to have cable or anything like that. So I guess it's nice that it's out there in some form, but I think that movie is probably still easy enough to at least rent or check out somewhere. And I would say check out the original version. But that's kind of interesting. I just wanted to mention two movies that I watched this past sort of holiday break. I checked out Sofia Coppola's Priscilla, which is about Priscilla Presley. And I can't remember if I had mentioned this before. I think I had said one of the filmmakers that I'm always willing to check out, even when I know they're not always going to hit a home run, is Sofia Coppola. And I really like her as a filmmaker. I feel like she has this really unique ability to capture mood in a way that a lot of filmmakers don't or don't even attempt. And, she sort of catches the moments between the bigger moments in a way that is really difficult to do. And she does it with a lot of success. And, some of her films I feel like work more than others. I think Lost in Translation, to me, is probably one of the most successful in doing what I'm talking about, where it's like she's able to capture that weird dreamy sensation. When it's like when you're awake with your friends and it's nighttime, but it's slowly turning to dawn and it almost feels like the world isn't even aware of this moment existing. Like she's able to capture that cinematically. And I think that this Priscilla is really interesting because it's a little more straightforward than some of those more dreamy like films. And I think this is probably her most successful film for reaching like the widest audience possible while still retaining her style. Because it really is a pretty straightforward story about Priscilla Presley, meeting, and like it's a more of a standard sort of narrative where it's like you begin with this girl and she's, on an army base and someone comes up and, she's in her ordinary world, so to speak. Right. And then she's invited by this military guy, like, hey, Elvis Presley's here. Do you like Elvis Presley? Like, why don't you come to one of our dinner parties and you can meet him? And so then she meets him and then she steps out of that into his world. And what's interesting is we had the Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie. I think it was last year. And which is, of course, well, that was like a LSD trip, through Elvis's life. And it's very much, his experience. But this is very much Priscilla's experience, where you get the sort of, wow, Elvis is just this intriguing, mysterious figure, and you can see why people would be entranced by him. But then when she marries him, then she's at Graceland, he leaves and he goes and makes movies, and it sticks with her. So you are experiencing what it's like for her to be, coupled up with Elvis Presley. So she's trying to just exist in this enormous mansion where she doesn't know anybody. And she will see in the gossip papers, Elvis seen kissing Anne Margaret. And we don't know if it's true or not, or if it's just, we only know it from what she's experiencing. And so then when he returns and he dips in and out of this movie, we're just as in the dark as she is about what's really going on and if he really loves her. And, I just thought it was really, really well done. And I can't remember the actress. Kaylee Spaney, I believe, is who plays Priscilla, and she is so good.
Really?
Yeah, I just thought this was really interesting. And I mean, there's also this weird element to the fact that, Elvis met her when she was freaking 14 years old, which is just all sorts of ick, right? So, and they deal with that a little bit, where he's like, he likes having her around, and she's like, well, I want to be like, sexual with you, and he's just like, no, not yet, darling, not yet, and so it's like, but what is he doing? Kind of keeping her around, and he knows he has this power over her. And then when she becomes of age,
being a groomer, is that not the
exactly? And it's funny because the movie doesn't necessarily take a stance; it just presents it, and you can see it from how you can imagine someone her age and her experience is experiencing this. And then of course you bring what your own feelings to it. And it's, I don't know. I thought Coppola really knocked it out with this one. And I think more people than most with her films would enjoy watching this, especially if they enjoy, the subject matter.
How is Jacob Elordi as Elvis?
Very good. Very good. I know I don't really watch Euphoria, but I know he has this tendency to play sort of handsome creeps. And I think he doesn't make Elvis creepy, but he definitely makes him a mysterious, and you can completely understand the charm. He's really handsome. He has a way, but he's also a little like, what is this guy's deal? Like there's a little bit of that to it, but in the perfect amount, where you could understand why Priscilla would be entranced by this guy, but you're also like, huh. And also, I mean, it's sort of, this is way, way different, but gets sort of into that Michael Jackson factor, where it's like, this is a person who is completely detached from reality. He exists in his own reality. He has people that keep him in that reality. And what does that do to a person? I mean, it doesn't forgive anything that any harm they bring to anyone, but you're also like, wow, this person did not have a human experience on this planet. It's a very weird, and the little amounts of time we spend with him, I feel like that is portrayed pretty well by Elordi.
Do you feel that the film is kind of makes for a matched set with Elvis?
I think so. I kind of wondered, not to accidentally put my mom on the spot or anything, but like she obviously grew up with Elvis and she's a huge Elvis fan, and she really enjoyed the Baz Luhrmann movie. And I was trying to decide if she would like Priscilla or if it would be, this sort of reckoning with Elvis, certainly with the whole Priscilla of it all. I don't feel like has entered like the popular conversation until recently as much.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, growing up, I don't remember that being much of a thing. It was like, oh, Priscilla Presley. Yeah, great. Yeah, that was Elvis's wife, right? But I feel like now these days when people online sort of are willing to pick things apart a little bit more and go like, how old she was, right? When they met, in a way that we didn't, I feel like, used to do. And so I wondered actually what she would think of how the movie portrayed it all. And we have Pops Hall reviews. Maybe if she checks it out, I'll bring in a Mama Hall review of Priscilla, because I'm kind of curious myself.
I'm curious myself. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. And okay, Zachy, a couple episodes ago, you talked about Godzilla -1, and you said you're so good at this. You're like, I know you, Brian. You are really, really going to dig this movie. And holy cow, dude, I loved this movie. Godzilla
I told you, man.
1.
I told you.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, for anyone who is like me and a little behind and hasn't caught this yet, full recommendation. Like this, and I've said many times on this show, for some reason, I'm just not a big monster movie person. I don't really get into the Godzillas. I don't really get into the King Kongs. I don't know why. They're fine, but I don't feel a lot for them, and I don't really anticipate them. But so I went into this one trusting you, like knowing there's got to be something to this that you thought that I was really going to attach myself to. And oh my gosh, dude, this movie. And you know why? I think many people know by now, but really this is a movie about the people on the ground. And they pick this really intriguing protagonist. I mean, it's like I almost don't even want to talk about what the specifics are, because it's so interesting and so specific to Japan, right? Like post-war Japan. And that's really, it's interesting having this Japanese movie really examining their feelings about government post World War II, right? And their place in the war, and that's the Godzilla movie I'm talking about. I haven't even talked about Godzilla yet, right? That's what the movie is. It's about this person post World War II having to reckon with what they did or what they haven't done, and then when you introduce Godzilla into the mix. I mean, dude, this honestly felt like a mixture between a Steven Spielberg movie and a Christopher Nolan movie to me.
Oh, 100%. Well, it's funny you say that, because that's when I watched it. That's what Pervez, he was like, it was very Nolan-esque. That's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, right down to certain specific story beats and just the drama and the intrigue of like banding people together. Like, okay, how you really get into the emotion of the devastation of what Godzilla does. So when he trounces through town, we are with the people on the ground who are experiencing the aftermath and what they've lost. And then it becomes, okay, how do we as people take this thing down? And they get into this really interesting sort of scientific attack, that's really interesting and really thrilling in execution. And it's always about the people and how they're feeling and what it means to them and why. And I found myself, I mean, I was recounting the movie to Federica on a walk the other day, and I found myself getting really worked up, like retelling the tale. So it's, man, high recommendation for Godzilla -1. It's very, very good.
Oh, I mean, I think it's one of the best movies of the year.
Definitely.
And what's sort of amusing to me is that looking at Rotten Tomatoes, best reviewed movies of the year this year are Oppenheimer and Godzilla -1. And Godzilla -1 is almost like the sequel to Oppenheimer.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, in a very literal sense, it's set in the aftermath of the events that Oppenheimer started, right? And the question that people have had is like, well, why is it called -1? It's like, because Japan is at like 0. You're right, after the war, and then Godzilla shows up, and now they're at -1. But as you said, I mean, I think a movie like this doesn't work if you're not invested in the characters. And the legendary the American Godzilla films that they've been making for the last 10 years or so. I think that was the big issue. I think this was something that you echoed, but certainly for me, the Gareth Edwards film, the character we were invested in was Bryan Cranston, and then they kill him off like a third of the way through.
Right.
And you're following Aaron Taylor Johnson. You don't really care about him that much. Right.
Yeah. I appreciated the verisimilitude they were going for. Like they were aiming for that clearly with that version, but they did not nail it with the characters. And this one does both. This one,
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And to your, like our main character, and he's got sort of this motley, assortment of people that he's on the boat with. I got like Jaws orca vibes from that.
100%. Yep.
Right. And without spoiling anything, I think for me, what I liked, because I had the same experience. I told Amina, I was like, you just go see it. Trust me. And she's like, why the hell would I watch a Japanese Godzilla movie? I'm like, just you trust me. For once, please. I was like, Brian trusts me. Why don't you? And she took it. Dries, by the way, he really liked it. But the way things wrap up, it's in a manner that is not unexpected, I don't think, but that's not a debit, because it sort of comes together in a way where you're like, yes, I'm glad they did it this way. Does that make sense?
Complete agreement. Honestly, when this hits streaming, if we're in sort of a slow period early in the year, I'd say let's do an episode on it. I'd love to really talk about the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm totally down.
Yeah, but no, I agree.
Well,
I was very happy with all the choices.
It related to this because I'm assuming you saw the trailer for the new Godzilla and Kong movie in front of Aquaman.
I did.
And it's been interesting seeing sort of the conversations like, oh, Godzilla Minus was so great, and now we got to look at this shit, And I'm like, this is me. I'm not blown away by the trailer for the new Godzilla and Kong movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I am like, I kind of love that you can do that. Like, you got this Godzilla and you got this Godzilla, and just whichever one you like, there you go. This is kind of like this is too. This is like a serious meditation on post-war Japan, and then this is like, hey, there's like a big ape bully at the center of the earth, and he's picking on King Kong, and now Godzilla shows up to help him. I'm like, hey, man, whatever.
yeah. I think I'm with you, because they're very, very different, and I love that each fan can get the thing that they want. Like, it's fun to have the serious meditation film, and not to make it sound like it's overwrought or anything. It's just a great story, Godzilla Minus One.
Exactly.
But for people that also want to just enjoy something fun and smashy, like there's that too. Like I agree. I like that there's both.
It just going back to what I said, a couple episodes ago, it's like we're at a point now where we've got so many flavors of Batman. It's like, just pick which one you like.
Yeah.
If you want your George Clooney, that's there. If you want your Robert Pattinson, that's there. And there's a whole big spectrum in between,
Yeah, and it goes, getting a little ahead then, speaking of DC, where, Batman obviously has to live in some sort of brooding sort of universe. And then the thing, when you try to do the Marvel thing and make everything coexist, you get like a clash of moods in a way, and then you bring some people down, or you lighten some people up that shouldn't be as light, and it's just kind of like, why not? Let's just let each person exist in the thing that best suits them, So or why not have kind of the Batman, but also you can have the Ben Affleck Batman? Like, why not?
Isn't that funny how we're at a point now where we welcome not being part of a universe?
I know. Yeah,
it's like we've run the full gamut.
Yeah. It's interesting seeing this whole, we'll probably get into it with Aquaman, but we're seeing superhero movies suffer for the first time in many, many, many years, right? And so it's
Yep.
interesting looking at these cycles and having existed in them for so long that we can now take a step back and sort of look at these trends and see what's worked and what's exhausted itself. And right. Yeah. Experiments that have gone well and have not gone well.
Oh, bummer. The holidays are over. But yay, your weird relatives left. But no more presents. But yay, you have your freedom again. But there are no more desserts. But there's also no more holiday music, huh? The new year is full of ups and downs. But however you're feeling, you can always be happy with all the content on Prime Video. Catch the new season of Reacher, included with Prime.
Why'd you hit him so hard?
I don't hit soft.
Rent or buy new releases like The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. You can even add on hundreds of streamers, all in one app with one password. No bummers here, just lots of yay. Prime Video, find your happy place. Restrictions apply. Prime membership not required to rent or buy. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Breast milk science. It's a thing. And it's our thing. We're ByHeart. We're an infant formula company on a mission to get a lot closer to the most superfood on the planet, breast milk. Our patented protein blend has more of the important and most abundant proteins found in breast milk. We're the first and only U.S.-made formula to use organic, grass-fed whole milk, not skim. We make our formula in our own factories in Iowa, Oregon, and Pennsylvania, using a small batch manufacturing process that works to preserve the integrity of our ingredients. We ran the largest clinical trial by a new infant formula company in 25 years, and clinically proved benefits like easier digestion, less gas, and softer poops versus a leading infant formula. We were the first infant formula company to earn the Clean Label Project Purity Award. And while we've put a lot into ByHeart, there's a long list of things you won't see on our ingredient list, like no corn syrup, no maltodextrin, no GMO ingredients, no soy, no palm oil. ByHeart, a better formula for formula. Learn more at byheart.com.
Well, in that vein, I just wanted to share, I just revisited yesterday a movie which I haven't seen like since it came out, which is Predator 2.
Oh, okay.
And this is, I liked it. I liked it when it came out. I've been consistently for more than 30 years, I've been a defender of Predator 2, but I saw it back when it came out. I haven't really revisited it since. So, but I watched the first Predator with my second kid because he hadn't seen it. And after that, I was like, hey, why don't we roll into the second one? And I got to say, Brian, this is a good movie. Like, I know that there's sort of a perception that it's lesser, and it is. I mean, it's the first one is obviously better, but like, I don't know where the continuum is, but I know for a little while it was quite hated on.
Sure.
I think it's a good movie. It's different. It's doing something totally different. And considering the fact that basically none of the creatives came back, like John McTiernan did not come back, and obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger's not in it. They turned the Predator films. It's like an anthology series, you know?
Right.
Where you're like, let's just drop the Predator into this scenario and see what happens, you know?
Which I think is a great idea. I mean, and Prey, I guess, continued that tradition, right?
Very much so, yeah. You know, but we're talking about shared universes, you know, that film. So Danny Glover is the main character. And by the way, I this is like such a deep cut, but whenever my oldest kid, whenever he sees Danny Glover, he's like, we're Danny Glover. Which for those listening, like, what are you talking about? So Brian and Sean for my 30th, was it for my 30th? I think it was.
I think so.
For my 30th, jeez Louise. For my 30th birthday, they did like this video, and they had a clip of Danny Glover from Lethal Weapon. He's like, and they dubbed over, it says, "Word, Zeki," and then Like, I think it's Mel Gibson's like, we're Danny Glover.
Yeah, right. Which is an exchange they actually have in Lethal Weapon 3, I think, right?
In Lethal Weapon 3, yeah.
Word
So
Riggs.
anyway,
Yeah, word Raj.
Word Raj. So anyway, but anyway, so if you're not going to get Schwarzenegger back, I'm kind of like, I love that you got Danny Glover. Like, you wouldn't expect that, right? Yep. And he makes for a really interesting lead. But anyway, he ends up in the Predator's ship, and he goes into his trophy room, and there, just big as life, clear as day, is the skull of the alien from the Alien films. And I remember being 10 or 11 when I saw it. I was like, dude, that's an alien skull,
Right.
It was the equivalent of when Bruce Wayne says Metropolis in Batman Forever. I was like, it's the thing with the other thing, the thing that the two things I like, they know each other, and it's like the simple joy of like, hey, maybe these things coexist. And again, now here we are 30 plus years later, like, oh God, another universe, like,
yeah. Or we demand it. We're like, how dare they not, name check the thing that I know.
Whereas back then it's just that thing. But anyway, this is a good movie, and I'm actually like, I'm fascinated by sort of the reputation that it had at some point. I don't know. Again, I don't know if that's the case anymore, where it was hated or whatever. I'm like, what's to hate? It's a good flick.
I'd like to see it again. I've only seen it maybe once or twice ever since it came out, so it's not really. I don't remember it very well. So
it's directed by Stephen Hopkins, who did. Oh gosh, he did Lost in Space, but I mean, don't hold that against him. But he did like Ghost in the Darkness and stuff, and the whole production design. It's interesting because it's like this kind of Blade Runner meets RoboCop vision of
Los like
Angeles.
Day After Tomorrow a little bit, right?
Yeah, because it's set in 97. The movie came out in 90, right? So it's like, and I'm like, well, clearly they're not even trying to be like, oh, this is what Los Angeles will be like in 7 years, because it's just a friggin' urban nightmare,
Yeah.
But I appreciate that it kind of was going for just something real comic booky,
Mm-hmm.
And then just a tangent, after watching Predator 2, I was like, I feel like reading Batman versus Predator. So I just reread that series last night, and I'm like, that's a great series.
Really? I haven't read it.
I mean, that, again, simpler times, being a kid, I remember that the comic book came out in like 92 and being like, wow, what? Batman fighting Predator?
Mm-hmm.
How would you do that? Because you're a kid and you're like, oh no, they can have comic book characters just meet whoever, it's not that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great. Like, it reads like a movie. Like, you could totally, like, had they made that comic book into a movie, it would have kicked ass.
Wow, that's cool.
Anyway, so that's me. That's my dip into the early 90s.
Yeah, well, I want to check that out at some point. I mean, I know the first Predator pretty well, but the second one, I not well at all. I just remember that it's sort of a funky Los Angeles. That's honestly what the few things I remember of it.
Yeah, and by the way, Bill Paxton is in it. We just saw him in Tombstone.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
Bill Paxton has the distinction of being the only person killed by a Terminator, an alien, and a Predator.
Wait, sorry, I can't remember if you said, but what did your son think of it going from 1 into 2?
I think they liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I know, I was talking to Hamza, and he was like, I wish like the main guy was like a bigger, like somebody in the vein of Arnold, right? And I was like, well, but how can you out Arnold?
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I
think it's
kind of
interesting
appreciate
to go. Yeah, no. I think we're going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
I'm just, Danny Glover is not somebody you would think of for a role like this, and I think that's what makes it unique.
Yeah, like you saw what happens when He-Man takes on the Predator. So like what happens when it's dropped into real life, you know, and every man has to square off with him. That's kind of an interesting shakeup, right? To the formula.
I think so. And I mean, just generally, because there's like 5 Predator movies, right? I've liked
wow,
which is crazy too. I've liked all of them except the 4th one.
Yeah, that was the Shane Black one, right?
The Shane Black one. Yeah, I think you and I
Yeah,
both
that one was kind of rough.
kind of disappointment. But I mean,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, look, it's not the Magnificent Ambersons, Brian.
Jackie, I just put coffee in my mouth.
It's like, what are we looking for here? We want to see some gnarly kills, and we want to see the Predator defeated. And if you give me that stuff, I'm fine with it. I don't need some grand overarching mythology, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's it. But we have not done a Predator commentary track, which I feel that is like a hole in our library, which we need to address at some point.
Absolutely, yeah, I'd love to. That's one of those ones where I think I saw it kind of young, like on TV, and was really captivated by it, and then didn't see it again until like, I don't know, like my 30s or something, or 20s, when it's like DVD became like a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, Predator, and then bought it, popped it in, and was like, wow, this movie is so good. It's just
really in terms of what it's doing and how it does it, that is a virtually perfect movie. The original,
exactly
Predator.
what you just said. I mean, it could just be this kind of cheesy B movie, but the way that it's executed and that third act is incredible. Like the battle of wits between Schwarzenegger and the creature.
Yes.
It's so good. And the score. The score.
I was just about to say, I was like, we say this a lot, where there was a propensity during the 80s for these synth scores.
Yeah.
That were very common at the time, that just instantly date movies. And I watch like RoboCop, I watch Predator, and I'm like, thank God they got these great orchestral scores.
Yep, Alan Silvestri. It's incredible.
It's very Back to the Future Alan Silvestri.
Oh yeah, 100%. That whole he is so good. I watched something with him recently. I think it was The Abyss, where he does that thing like do like, and it really gets you tense. Like you're like gripping your seat because he's really making your heart pump faster. He's so good at that. I wish we were getting more scores from him these days.
Well, I mean, you have to imagine he's doing a lot more concerts and things like that now.
Sure. Oh yeah, I would love to. How John Williams is at the Bowl and Danny Elfman for a minute there was touring. I would love to see Silvestri.
Dude, if Silvestri comes there, you got to let me know. I'd make the trip for that.
Definitely. Yeah.
Actually, while we're talking about,
oh yeah, you got
which one? Oh, from Seth MacFarlane's birthday party?
Yeah, I think you're the one who sent it to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're basically Seth MacFarlane, who of course is probably a billionaire at this point, with all his
at this point,
Family Guy and everything. But there was a clip of him from his birthday party at his house, and basically he rented Alan Silvestri and an orchestra.
Yeah.
And that was the entertainment for the evening. So you can see Silvestri performing, I think, Back to the Future or something. And then the camera pans over to Seth MacFarlane at the side, just like, yes!
Which doesn't that just seem like a Family Guy cutaway or something? Like Peter's like, here's like if Alan Silvestri is playing the Avengers music, and then you just like camera pans over and the orchestra is there.
I just love that that's what like a guy like him does with his money. That's like something that we would.
That's what we would do. We would absolutely do that.
Yeah.
No, but speaking of RoboCop, I wanted to bring this to your attention. There's this. I just added it on my Vudu. It's called RoboDoc.
I've heard of this.
So this is like it's a series. It's like 4 episodes, about an hour long each, and it's just a 4-hour making of RoboCop. And dude, this is like one of the best making of docs I've ever seen. It's such a deep dive, right?
So yeah, tell me about it, because I've seen clips from it, and it looked the clip, not your typical sort of stories from behind the scenes.
Yeah.
In particular, I'm thinking of the one about the Oreos.
Yeah. Yes.
It's so funny. But so it's like a real deep dive with the people who were there, right? Like not just the director or producers, but like crew.
Yeah, and it's not sort of like standard DVD, making of documentary, And this is, for me, certainly that the further in the past a film is, that's when you get really sort of the meat and potatoes of how the thing was made, because they're not trying to promote it, right? And the other thing is, virtually everyone who's involved in the film who is still around talked on camera for this documentary, So you get not only Paul Verhoeven and Michael Meyer and Ed Neumeyer and the behind the scenes people, but like Peter Weller's there and Nancy Allen, all of the Kurtwood Smith and Ray Wise and the various hoodlums, Ronnie Cox, and it's a real they have such a deep well of affection for this film because it truly has withstood the test of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they talk about what a crappy experience it was making the movie, but they talk about it with the hindsight of, but here we are talking about this beloved movie, 3.5 decades later.
Right.
And I mean, obviously, me. I mean, I love this movie, and I think I know a lot about it, and yet so much of this movie, what the stories that they tell is entirely new to me.
Mm-hmm.
And they show you like Peter Weller's, his own notes about the character, and stuff that he jotted down about what makes Murphy, and the backstory that Nancy Allen came up with for Lewis. And I just find all that stuff so interesting,
Yeah.
Paul Verhoeven's, his notes on the script about what a certain scene is meant to typify or signify, and so his own storyboards and stuff. I love all that stuff.
Man, I love behind the scenes things, even on movies that I'm not as familiar with. I just love the process. So this sounds like something I'd love, that really digs into the nuts and bolts.
It's very different, but I think we both saw it, right? The Star Wars Holiday Special documentary.
Yes. Yeah. A Disturbance in the Force.
A Disturbance in the Force. Yes.
Yeah.
Which that too, I look at that and I'm like, I love that we're here now, where like that holiday special, which was sort of just this weird oddity, which, certainly when we were growing up, I don't think, YouTube wasn't around. So it was just like, oh, that exists, I think, kind of thing. Right. But to now be like, hey, we can look back on this with some measure of fondness as well.
Yeah. And I thought in particular, that one did a good job of, you could have 90 minutes of people just crapping on it, or an opportunity for them to use their stand-up material, that they have about that special. But what I appreciated was they actually brought in, TV executives and Bruce Vilanch, who worked on it, and they provided a lot of context for the era, and variety shows and Star Wars's place in pop culture, and the fact that there weren't VCRs, like you weren't rewatching Star Wars over and over. So if you were a kid and you saw Star Wars was going to be on TV, that was really special, but then they also get into, but this is what was on TV at the time, and I thought they did a good job of explaining how it came into existence, how it came to be what it is,
Yes.
So,
and the fact that, and this is something we talked about before, like, nobody sets out to make just a piece of shit. There's all kinds of good intentions before you end up with whatever the thing is. And so trying to contextualize that aspect by having like the costume designers and the set designers or whatever, this is, we're just trying to, this is the job we were given. We were trying to do the best we could,
Right. Yeah.
Doesn't mean we have to consider that special canon, but Brian, maybe we should. Maybe
we should. Life Day has persisted, right?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Life Day is in Young Jedi Adventures. If you go to the there's that whole episode about it, and then the Disney parks, right? They have you can buy Life Day robes, and I actually have a Life Day Christmas ornament someone bought me. So
wow. Just another Hallmark holiday, Brian, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Hey, let's take a short break. We'll come back with some listener letters.
Oh, bummer. The holidays are over. But yay, your weird relatives left. But no more presents. But yay, you have your freedom again. But there are no more desserts. But there's also no more holiday music, huh? The new year is full of ups and downs. But however you're feeling, you can always be happy with all the content on Prime Video. Catch the new season of Reacher, included with Prime.
Why'd you hit him so hard?
I don't hit soft.
Rent or buy new releases like The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. You can even add on hundreds of streamers, all in one app with one password. No bummers here, just lots of yay. Prime Video, find your happy place. Restrictions apply. Prime membership not required to rent or buy. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Tired of wasting time and money on starvation diets that lead to more frustration and stress? If there was a weight loss solution that could actually work for you, would you try it? Then head to Golo.com.
I'm Steve. I lost 138 pounds in 9 months on Golo.
I'm Amber. I've lost 128 pounds with Golo Taking Release.
If you're ready to take back control of your life, head to Golo.com now and see how Golo can work for you. That's GOLO.com.
My sleep is way better. My inflammation has gone way down. Golo saved my life. I was way overweight. That's what sent me down the path. I wanted to make sure and live for my kid.
I have literally tried everything. I was on the verge of getting gastric bypass surgery, and I saw the Golo commercial, and it was the last thing I tried because it worked.
Join over 2 million people who have found a better way to lose weight with Golo. Your healthier and happier life begins at Golo.com. That's GOLO.com. Again, GOLO.com.
And we are back, and hey, it's been a little while since we've done listener letters, so we've got an abundance of communications from our listeners that I wanted to get through.
Great.
So this is from Charles Landy in response to our commentary track for The Last Jedi. And before we even get into Charles' letter, boy, nothing more gratifying than how excited people were to finally have this commentary. I don't know, that made me happy.
Oh, Zachy, I was absolutely delighted because you teased it, I think, the day before. And there was a lot of, like, I'll believe it when I see it. And like, at long last, my prayers have been answered. Like, did you hog tie Brian and trap him in a room? Like that.
And the answer is yes. Yes.
Yeah, I was showing all of them to Federica. I was like, this is amazing. Like, it just, it was a long time coming, and it was very special and cool to see that people were looking forward to it the way that they were.
And hopefully they enjoyed it. I do. Yeah. My sense is that people did, but I don't know. But hopefully it lived up to the wait is my my wish for that. But Charles wrote in response to we were talking about the character DJ played by Benicio del Toro, and I referred to his vocal affect as kind of a Porky Pig style stutter, which I want to that specifically I was referring to the way he speaks. So I'm not saying that people who stutter sound like Porky Pig. I want to be clear about it. It felt very sort of theatrical, and so that was why I referred to it that way. But regardless, Charles says, in regards to the Porky Pig thing that Benicio del Toro chose to apply to his character DJ, let me just say this again, and I say again because I mentioned it before a few years ago. If you had told me as a young Star Wars fan in the 70s or 80s that there would one day be a character in a Star Wars movie that stuttered, I would have said that you were nuts. Movie characters when I was growing up spoke clearly, boldly, and bravely, and certainly not with a stutter. Benicio could have chosen to make that character speak as boldly and bravely as everyone else around him with little effort, but he didn't. DJ still had something to say despite how he said it. To me and others like me, that means something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really appreciated Charles writing that because, I think both you and I commented on mostly Benicio del Toro's approach or what do you want to say, choices, like it's one thing to so it reminds me of the movie Pearl Harbor. I haven't thought about that movie in years and years and years, and it was on cable and I stopped on it, and there's a character with it's basically his name in the movie is probably character with stutter, you know what I mean? Like it's such like a right, it's like just this cheap sort of, it's played for laugh. That's what I'm trying to say. Like it's not like that's actually something where he's a fully realized character and he happens to have a stutter, right? Like it's just sort of like, oh, let's just give him a thing. And probably people imitating him within the film, and it's just kind of not cool. And I think you and I were sort of questioning Del Toro's sort of approach to it, or almost like he felt like, oh, well, he's just making a choice. And did he do it well? And I really appreciated Charles' perspective on this because it helped me to see it in a different way, honestly. I mean, it was, it's so true. I mean, the way that he speaks isn't the character, right? It's the character is the fact that he kind of plays both sides and we don't really know where his loyalties lie, and maybe they lie nowhere, right? But he happens to have this affectation. And, I really appreciated that perspective and not focusing so much on that, but just looking at this character and seeing him have a speech, a manner of speech that we don't see very often, that isn't represented a lot. So I really appreciated this.
Thank you for that, Charles. And this is from Mark McGee, who says, "Hey guys, really enjoyed your latest episode." This is the George Bailey episode. He says, regarding the Francis Ford Coppola discussion, I wanted to mention a fave of mine that gets overlooked. Tucker, the Man in His Dreams, from 1988. Yeah, which, such a good movie. I don't know if you've seen that, Brian.
Not probably since like VHS in the 80s.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. It is a good movie.
Yeah.
Jeff Bridges is wonderful as a sadly doomed but forever optimistic car maker, Preston Tucker. Coppola's direction is very different and more stylistic than his other films, and the pace is as fast as a Tucker torpedo. It has some excellent supporting performances too, especially by Martin Landau, which, I agree with that. He's great in it. Who should have won the Oscar that year. Check it out if you haven't. There you go, Brian. There's your homework.
Yeah.
Also, I enjoyed your Planet of the Apes chat. Well, so did I, Mark. You don't need to twist my arm to talk about Planet of the Apes. He says, I grew up in the 70s and POTA was so popular back then. The movies, TV series, cartoon, and the merchandise. One of my most beloved toys were the POTA action figures by Mego. I still love those original films and have to say that I think I prefer the practical makeup to the current CGI, but I also did enjoy the recent ones. I'm sure I'll see the new one too. Thanks again for a great show, and I wish you both a blessed holiday season.
Oh, thank you. And same to you, Mark.
When it comes to Planet of the Apes, it's, I grew up as an Apes fan in the late 80s into the 90s, where it really was just a wasteland, right? I mean, there was no merchandise. There was nothing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so to be in a place now, like let me put it this way. I remember, this is like early 90s, I really wanted the Planet of the Apes soundtrack.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm a 13-year-old kid who's like, I want the soundtrack to Planet of the Apes. People are like, I'm going to record stores. They're like, what?
Right.
And I couldn't find it anywhere. And I remember there was the Tower Records on Army Trail Road. You remember that?
Yeah.
I rode my bike there from my parents. So this is like right when it had opened relatively recently. And they had a computer where you could look up albums. I'd never seen anything like this before.
Mm-hmm.
And I look up Planet of the Apes, and there it is. And I didn't have a CD player at the time. All I had was a tape player. So I had to find it on tape.
Wow.
So I'm like, hey, it gives you a little thing, you print it out, and you take it to the thing. You're like, hey, I want this. And the guy, it's probably some late teens clerk. It's like, yeah, I don't know. We don't have that. I'm like, well, how do I get it? They're like, oh, you have to order it by mail.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is just a different time. So I tell my mom, I was like, can you write a check for this? And and I send the thing out and I wait impatiently. I'm checking my mailbox for 2 weeks and this tape arrives, whatever, like a month later.
How magical.
And it was like a half hour long,
Sure. Yeah.
I'm just like cherishing every note. But I'm just saying, like, now I can pull out my phone right now. I can go to Apple Music in like 2 seconds. I'll get the soundtracks to every Planet of the Apes movie. I can probably find the cartoon soundtrack, the television show, you name it, right?
Oh yeah. Yep.
And so my point is, like, all of it never ceases to amaze me, like the ease of access to just the most arbitrary fandom.
I spoke about seeing The Abyss recently, and so I was doing a lot of reading about it, and I was really interested in it all over again. And I read that the novelization wasn't just hand someone the script and they'll bang out something in a week. James Cameron picked Orson Scott Card, who's like a science fiction author, did Ender's Game and everything, and he said, I want you to write a novel, not a novelization of my script, but I want you to write a novel. Bring the things that you want to bring. I'll collaborate with you, but I want this to be an actual novel experience that is the story of The Abyss. I come to learn, the first couple chapters get into, Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio's characters' backstories and everything. And I was reading that it's actually a really great reading experience. And this is, a book that came out in 1989. And I thought, well, I'd like to read that. So I was trying to see if I might even just like a PDF of it or something online. And sure enough, I just, I think it's through Etsy I found it. Someone had it in great condition, and I ordered it, and in less than a week I had it. This, you know what I mean? Like something so rare and specific, and it's over 30 years old. And you go to a used bookstore, you're not going to find this thing. And what you're talking about reminds me of that. I couldn't believe the ease of which I got something so rare and specific. It's amazing.
It really is. I mean, I remember the journey I went on just trying to watch the Apes films. Because I somehow was able to watch the first film when I lived in Saudi Arabia. It was not available at video stores. And then when we moved back here, I would go to Blockbuster. I'm like, oh, I want Beneath the Planet of the Apes. No, I'm calling around all these video stores. Nobody has it. And then my cousin saw that it was going to be on TV. She taped it for me. And then I had to wait a week till I saw her to get, and I got my VHS taped off TV version of commercials. That's just what it is. That's what you had. Right.
Yeah.
And again, now it's like, let me just pull out my phone. I'll download Beneath the Planet of the Apes to my phone, and I'll be watching it while I'm talking to you.
Yeah. In HD, no less.
In
widescreen. Yeah.
So it is a magical time that we live in. I'm grateful for all of it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mark. Here's a note we got from Matthew Sharif, who says, "Oh, Spielberg, last week."
I like this already.
He says, "Last week I caught Bridge of Spies on HBO. I forgot how much I loved that film. You guys were watching with me. There was a shot in an office with the light shining ever so bright and in a high contrast to the room with a certain fuzz only seen in Stevens movies. And I thought to myself out loud, that's so Janusz."
Yes, I think I know the shot he's talking about too.
He says also Hanks is an undisputed master. Just make quality movies about historical events. It will save cinema and restore love for movies. Stop trying to one-up and outdo everything from zombies, dystopian futures, vampires, Marvel, etc. Case in point, one of the greatest movies I've seen, Oppenheimer. Let's just omit the fact that the king of cinema and movie making wrote/directed it. I
would love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
He says, "P.S. I'm sorry, but how have you not seen Back to School?"
I'm doing the thing where I point at my chest and look behind me like, me? Like, is he talking to me?
So aside from being hilarious, it also has Paulie from Rocky, college student Johnny Lawrence, and a very young and funny Robert Downey Jr. Oh, poetry. Maybe you can straighten out my Longfellow.
You know what? I'm going to give it a shot, and then soon I will understand that reference. This is not the only comment we got about me needing to check out Back to School, so it's on the list.
I'm in the same boat as you on that. So
yeah. Oh, really? Oh, I'd forgotten that part of it. I thought it was just me. Okay. All right.
There you go. We got some
homework.
And then And then lastly, this is a note from Adam O, who says, this holiday season, I wanted to take a moment to come to the defense of Home Alone 2. Adam is not alone, I should say. He has an army lined up behind him.
And I wanted to, by the way, maybe I should say this for after. I'm just going to say it now. It was on quite a bit this season, and I was seeing it on TV, and I thought about, I hope we made it clear that we love that people love Home Alone 2. And we're never like saying, this is not a good film, you should not like this. It's more like, here's why I lean toward Home Alone. I actually thought about this, and I didn't know that this letter was going to happen, so I'm glad I'm having the opportunity
No, but what you're saying, that's exactly right, yeah. Adam goes on, he says, nostalgia is a hell of a drug. On a dark, probably rainy, maybe snowy, but most likely a cold, drizzly night in December 1992, my best friend at the time and I walked to the gross 20th Century Theater, now since closed, in downtown Juneau, Alaska, without any parents to watch this movie. We were 12. Before this, going to a movie at the theater was a big deal, mostly because it involved getting someone to take us, but now we had the taste of freedom. I remember laughing so hard during the third act that my stomach hurt. Around the same time, I heard a familiar laugh behind us, and I glanced back to see my parents in the back row. They had come to see it too, and to make sure two 12-year-olds weren't acting like fools. We earned trust that evening and newfound independence.
That's like a Wonder Years episode.
It really is.
It's so sweet. It's not like they interfered or anything. It ended up being kind of a sweet moment. I love that.
You can be watching the movie with Daniel Stern in it while you have Daniel Stern's voiceover.
Right.
It's perfect. That movie was the beginning for me of a period of time where I saw a ton of movies in the theater, and much like the both of you have talked about, I can remember which theater I saw most. From watching Jurassic Park and Son-in-Law back to back, that's a weird double feature right there.
Yeah.
Back to back at the other theater in Juneau to watching X-Men in Glasgow, Scotland, and the Fast and the Furious at the Micronesia Mall in Guam. So many more memories are associated with the cinema experience, and for me, it all started with a sequel that may not measure up to the original film, but regardless is still an annual viewing in our house. Also, I wanted to add that the advice you gave another listener on the last regular episode when he asked for podcast advice came at a perfect time. Inspired in no small part to you guys, my buddy Kelly and I have kicked off our own podcast where we discuss various nerdy topics. If it wasn't for the rapport that we both enjoyed listening to movie film, I'm not sure we would have done it. Happy holidays and best wishes in the new year.
Oh man, thank you, Adam. This whole email has just brought so much joy to me. I really enjoyed all of it.
So the podcast, by the way, is called Adam and Kelly Talk Nerdy, and it's a lot of fun. So check that out.
Great. Great.
But I think what Adam says about the experience of going to the theater, I know that's something that you can relate to.
Oh yeah, and that whole 12-ish-year-old thing, getting on my bike and going to the theater for the first time by myself. And I remember I can't recall what the first one was, but I do associate that with So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Okay.
That
Not
I
quite
remember.
Son-in-Law, but
yeah, it's like Mike Myers, Wayne's World. He's got a new movie. Let's go! And my friends getting on our bikes and going, and oh man, it just listening to that rather. Really brought back some magic.
Was that was Rice Lake? I'm assuming
Rice Lake Square. Yep.
Yeah.
In Donato.
I mean, you know this. The first movie you and I watched together, which was Fight Club.
Mm-hmm.
That was at the Century or whatever in off of Boughton.
Mm-hmm.
And I happened to drive by there this past summer when I went with my kids. I took a picture of that. I was like, look, this is movie film history right here.
Yeah, I love that. I Home Alone 1 was on, and I told my dad, I said, I remember watching that at Stratford Mall with you, you and Mom. And he was like, man, you remember so many things. And I was like, well, yeah, for some reason, those movie experiences, they really did imprint on me. And so, I love that. I love it. And other people having the same thing.
I think it's more odd to not remember like where you watched a movie, because I meet plenty of people like, how do you, I just remember having seen it. I'm like, yeah, but to me that like, it's the whole experience of going into I remember what theaters I watched movies in,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I remember, In fact, the Woodland Hills AMC that's closing down now.
Yeah, it's turning into the Rams football team training facility.
Yes, but like we watched a lot of movies there. I remember we watched Dukes of Hazzard there.
Actually, you know what? Okay, this is perfect because I was just trying to think usually the movies we tend to recall these experiences are the ones that made a huge impression on us. And so I was trying to think, was there some movie that I just don't think about?
Dukes of Hazzard.
and then maybe I wouldn't remember the theater going experience. And when you said Dukes of Hazzard, I do remember that I've seen it, but I did not remember that's where we saw it.
It meant more to me, clearly. Not because it's a good movie. It's a terrible movie, but
that happened.
And we almost watch Crystal Skull there, of course.
That's what I always associate.
That's part of the legend of that movie for us, you know.
Yeah, but the power was out. We had tickets in advance. We drove all the way out there to go see it at Woodland Hills, and the power was out, so we had to go somewhere else.
All right. Well, hey, let's take another short break, and then we can come back and talk about one of the big new releases in theaters right now. And we are back, and you know who else is back, Brian?
Who's that, Zachy?
Why, it's Jason Momoa as King Arthur of Atlantis.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? You can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
And it's about time.
It kind of is. I mean, it's been 5 years since Aquaman came out and became the highest grossing DC superhero movie ever.
Yeah. I mean, this was one of those ones that it was explosive. I mean, huge, made $1 billion. And then it just took so long for this one to come about. And this was one of those things where there was many release dates, right? And it kept getting getting kicked down.
I obviously the pandemic played a role in sort of screwing things up, but it has been now 5 years from one Aquaman to the next Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom, and it feels like it's been playing in a Lost Kingdom because the drop off in audience has been rather remarkable.
Yeah, which is, I mean, obviously there's a lot of factors at play, right? I mean, just the whole. I guess the Snyderverse, is that what we'll call it? The DC. I know that it's like the DCU, the DC ECU, the DC, like whatever it's called now. You know, I don't know.
So Snyder fans do not consider all of this the Snyderverse. I think lay people, because they're like, no, if Zack Snyder did not personally bless it,
even though he cast this Aquaman.
Yeah, look, me personally, I consider all of this the Snyderverse because whatever, right? You know,
I guess I sort of get it. I mean, it's not like he probably had a lot to do with this one, even though he's the one who kicked off this iteration that this is stemming from, right?
To me, it's very straightforward. Ezra Miller is the Flash, or was the Flash, because Zack Snyder deemed it so. Jason Momoa is Aquaman because Zack Snyder deemed it so. There we go. Good enough for me, you know? However, many of the Snyder faithful are quite specific in their devotion. It's been fun, by the way, just seeing sort of the online discourse surrounding Rebel Moon.
I was going to ask you, have you watched it?
I have not, and not because I don't want to, but I already danced this jig a month ago with Napoleon, where Ridley Scott's like, oh, there's like the extended 4-hour cut. That's like the real version. So, and Snyder's already like, yeah, this PG-13 cut, that's not the real one. Like I got my R-rated one that's coming. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to wait because like, I don't know how much time I want to spend in this world, so I want to be.
That's a good point. Yeah. If you're saying this isn't the thing, well, then I'll wait for the thing.
I'll wait for the thing. Right. But anyway, there's been the usual dog pile on via critics, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's been the usual counter dog pile by fans. And I just kind of took a step back where I'm like, man, I'm glad I don't have a horse in this race. Like I just get to watch this.
Right.
Nobody's threatening my family this time around, right. So that's been fun. But anyway, yeah. So Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, with its debut, it signals the end of 10 years of interconnected DC films.
Wow.
And
longer.
It does kind of, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, thinking back to Man of Steel, but I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Well, in addition to being the end of the DC expanded universe / the Snyderverse, it's also the end of a truly abysmal box office year for DC, where we had 4 DC films hit theaters and 4 flops.
Yeah, really rough. And I mean, this one opened to less than the Marvels, right? Everybody was writing articles about the Marvels.
Yes, although this one may end up, kicking and screaming its way to, or coughing and scraping, whatever the metaphor, to greater than the Marvels domestic total. Because the Marvels didn't even make it to 100 million.
Yeah, and then Disney sort of tapped out with the reporting on box office. Remember that? They were
Disney was like, we give up.
Isn't that funny? I mean, it was like, obviously, if it's still in theaters, it's still making money, but they're like, yeah, we're not going to even report it, whatever.
Yes.
I thought that, I've never seen that before.
So Disney has had a pretty awful year.
Yeah.
However, Warner Brothers has actually had an okay year, except for DC stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Disney just bet it all on franchises, whether we're talking about Indiana Jones or Marvel superheroes or, Disney animation, and pretty much crapped out with everything except for like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Warner Brothers, Wonka is in theaters right now. That's doing pretty well. The Color Purple is in theaters right now. That's doing well. Barbie is obviously one of the biggest hits of the year. So, however, the only thing that really tanked it for them is all these DC movies, which nobody was interested in seeing.
Just a real quick side note, something I was noticing and wanted to mention. I think it's interesting how we've talked about this. Box office has been so different trends since COVID, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm finding kind of interesting is it used to be in recent years, it was like something has to come out of the gate really strong. And then that's a success. And then, it'll do well. I don't know, whatever. As long as it comes out of the gate super strong, that's a success. And now, going back to Pixar's Elemental, that came out not very strong, a little lukewarm, and people were like, "Oh, it's a failure." But that movie never went away. It continued to generate box office over the weeks and actually became a success.
Yep.
And there was another film like that I'm not thinking of right now that was more recent. I can't think of it, but it was a similar sort of thing where it came out a little tepid, but it never went away. It has remained in the top box office.
Hunger Games.
Oh, that's it. That is what it is. People were a little disappointed when it came out, but it has since gone on to be successful. And it reminds me of how box office used to be, right? Like movies had legs, and maybe that has to do with less films at the box or in theaters. I don't know, but it's just interesting to see how we're having to rethink the way we look at box office and success lately.
Yeah.
So maybe January is usually pretty empty. February, so who knows? Aquaman could be there for weeks and weeks, just continuing to chug away.
It's possible. Although looking at the post Christmas trends, what I'm seeing is like Wonka is doing better in daily box office than Aquaman, right? And so this is an interesting one because I suspect where you landed on this.
You know me well.
You know,
yes.
I don't know, man. I mean, maybe I'm just like, I feel like it's like kicking somebody when they're down to just shit all over it.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, because I'm kind of like, when it ended, I was like, nah, all right, that was me.
Yeah.
My ultimate takeaway is like, look, I don't think it's that far removed from the first one. So like, if you like the first one, it's kind of like in the same neighborhood. It's maybe a few standard deviations this way or that. I will say this: it looks like it comes off like it was edited to just within an inch of its life. It feels 100%. Like major, right?
Yep.
However, here's my positive. Here, I think the stuff that I liked the most, I really liked, and that was the relationship between Aquaman and his brother.
Completely agree.
I really liked Patrick Wilson in this.
Yes, I love Patrick Wilson.
I just like him in general. Yeah, the interesting thing to me is like Patrick Wilson, especially in this because he's got the blonde hair. I'm like, he looks like the traditional version of Aquaman.
Mm-hmm. I thought that too, actually.
Right, and I love everything. It was a very Thor Loki vibe.
Yeah, sure.
Which I plugged in with. So I liked. To me, when Orm re-enters the picture, it gets sort of this burst of oxygen that I tracked with. The rest, I don't know, man. It didn't particularly work for me. I there's a whole like the whole Lost Kingdom thing just didn't work for me. I just found it dull and trying to make Black Manta the vehicle for that whole storyline. I found it very uninteresting. That was me. And so it was literally by the time it ended, I was just like, I was looking for the stuff that worked for me. I did feel like I was reaching the end of my rope with this portrayal of Aquaman. Not to the same extent as like with Shazam earlier this year. I was like, I actively dislike Zachary Levi after this movie.
Yeah.
With Aquaman, I would have liked.
You mean in the way that he, just to get really specific with Shazam, it was like seeing that actor, the way that he was portraying what it was like to be a little boy as a grown man started to become very grating.
Very grating. And in that vein, I think the man-child aspect of Aquaman, it reached a point where I'm like, I'd like to see a progression where he's becoming more mature.
I literally wrote this down. I put, isn't he like 43 years old?
Yeah, right?
But he acts like, what's up with those dick bags?
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like, look, I mean, it's cool if he says cool or, you know, or
yes.
like, oh, no, yeah, you're totally. Right. But he has this real 14-year-old skater attitude that feels really weird.
Like there's points in the film where Orm is like, hey, you got to treat the crown with, you know, this, and you have to be thinking about and if as you, at least me, I'm like, yeah, he's right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So that was I wouldn't say again. I like Jason Momoa in this role. I liked him in the last one. I didn't mind him in this one, but the characterization started to get a little like, all right, dude, come on, let's treat this with some seriousness. And I'm not saying it needs to be dour or whatever. I like the humor, I like the jokes, but I think that the movie wants you to be on his side when I think a lot of you know, a lot of it is just him being like, woo, you know.
Right.
You know,
well, it's funny you say that because I did have the exact same thought as you, where they really landed on something with Jason Momoa. Like it made me bummed that we're not going to get a great, in my opinion, like a great Aquaman movie from him, because man, they really, that was a great idea. And
Yes.
I wish this movie had been better for that reason, especially with it being the last one.
Right. And so there's definitely that aspect of it where the comparison I made to this movie is Dark Phoenix, where both are these vestiges of a now defunct universe.
Yeah.
And by the time they came out, you already knew it was over, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of the same thing with Dark Phoenix. I'm like, look, I mean, again, it's like you're picking on somebody who's already dead, And same thing with that movie. I was like, well, I liked this, and this in it,
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I am with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It's like it's not a resounding thumbs up, but if you want this, and this, yeah, you probably like it,
Yeah, for me, I sort of. Sorry, I didn't want to. Actually, I was so interested in all your thoughts, I didn't even want to speak. So, if you have more, I'd really love to hear it.
And just one thing I'll say is like for the fact that the first film is all about how Temuera Morrison, how he's pining for his missing wife.
Yeah,
the fact that this movie gives them one scene together and he's unconscious in it.
Yeah.
So weird. Like, I don't even understand. I want to be in the edit suite and be like, you're telling me you didn't shoot any other footage of the two of them together, right? Of Nicole Kidman and Temuera. I love Temuera Morrison in this. I'm glad that they brought him in and he has a substantial role. And I'm glad the movie didn't go darker. It could have.
Mm-hmm.
The Aquaman comic books in the 70s did a story with Black Manta where Black Manta kills his son.
I just learned that this morning.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe
He's
it.
a little baby. Yeah, this is in the 70s. And I read that as a kid being like, God damn.
Right.
And so I'm glad the movie didn't do that. I don't want baby murder.
Yeah.
But I did, I would have liked a little bit more teeth for the Black Manta character. I mean, again, with other stuff before you get to the baby murdering,
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked a lot more from the villain, honestly.
Yeah.
I always, it's not super fair sometimes to acknowledge the realities of the production on certain films when you're trying to review them, but you have to acknowledge this had a really troubled production.
Yeah.
And I think you can feel that. Like, there was probably a movie and then for whatever reason they felt like they had to tweak it, and my understanding is they did that many times, and I think you can kind of feel that because I agree with you. There's so much in here that I really liked, and I wanted to sit with it for a minute. I really enjoyed, Aquaman and his dad. I really enjoyed Aquaman and his brother. I think the villain has a relationship with his dad too. That's his motivation, and it's mentioned, but he doesn't really do anything except, say to camera basically like, I want to kill Aquaman. Okay.
Yep.
And it's interesting too. I mean, you have to acknowledge production again. There's Amber Heard and whether or not she was sidelined for this for whatever reasons. But
by the way, just on that
weird.
Point, she's pretty present throughout the movie. Right? I didn't get the sense that her role was substantially reduced. Am I wrong?
I found it weird how little of a relationship they had with one another.
That's
down
true.
to dude. There's a scene at the end of the movie where basically all this stuff is crumbling down, like the end of Last Crusade, right? And Aquaman is running with his brother, like, we're going to make it, brother. I know we're going to make it. And then it cuts to his wife and child behind them. I turned to my brother and I was like, that's going to be a conversation later. She was present in it more than I expected, but like, I don't know. It felt a little like tacked on, or like I felt no connection between them.
Well, I think that's the problem. Is I just don't think they have a lot of chemistry.
I think there's that too, but
yeah.
And again, that's not like a chief complaint, but that was an observation, and it just the whole thing with him completely like basically like holding his brother's hand, like we're gonna live, and then her like like 100 yards behind them.
pushing the stroller, basically.
Yeah. But no, I think this movie. So all that out of the way, I acknowledge that there was a lot of issues, and this thing's probably stitched together within an inch of its life. So yes, I acknowledge that. But I'm just really noticing this thing with a lot of superhero movies lately, where it almost feels like we're Scrooge and we're being led by a ghost through the story versus actually living in the story with someone, and it's like pointing out, like, see over there, like he's having problems with his job. He doesn't like his job as king of Atlantis. And I'm like, oh, why? Like, let's get closer. Let's have him comment on it, like having a side with his wife about why he feels this way. It's like, no. Moving on. And then it's like, we're just sort of gliding through the story versus actually sitting in these moments, and right down technically, like a lack of close-ups. Like, we're not even getting close-ups of these characters. It's all like these medium shots, and we're just observing rather than living with these characters. And I want to be immersed. I want to feel these things rather than just gliding through the story and observing them and really not feeling a whole lot as I do that, I was thinking, and I'm going to come last time 2023 to the defense of The Flash. That movie, think about, you can disagree with certain things about it. And I completely understand the Ezra Miller aspect of it all. And I absolutely respect if people can't enjoy the movie for that reason. I really do understand that. But just looking at it strictly as a story and remembering the ending of that movie, slight spoiler, where it's like he has to make a decision about his mother. And then it comes down to him making this really challenging choice and taking a thing out of a grocery cart. I haven't forgotten it. It was so powerful. I had tears in my eyes. And I don't feel like any moment of this movie comes even close to the emotionality that I felt during The Flash. And it just boggles my mind that people didn't like that movie.
No, I'm with you.
Because at the very least, yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't have to be your favorite, whatever, but at least I thought it was a successful story. Yeah. And I don't think this movie was a successful story.
I fully agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, in the first Aquaman, one of my favorite moments, and it's just a little thing, and I'm paraphrasing probably badly because it's been a little while, but Aquaman is on a boat with Mira, I think, and he talks about why Black Manta is after him, right? And he's like, I let his father die, and I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's this recognition of, like, every life is precious kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I would have liked something in this film that would allow Aquaman to reckon with the consequences of that choice, right?
Yes.
So all of this is happening. The world is literally going to end because of the wrong choice Aquaman made, and somehow make that emotion, dealing with the long-term ramifications of that emotional choice that he made. That's interesting to me.
That should have been the movie. Like, I messed up and I'm going to fix it. I'm going to talk to this person, because that's what a king does.
Yes.
And it's funny. There was that scene where basically him and Mantis are fighting with their tridents.
Yes.
And as I was watching it, and it was just swooping around, the camera, and there was, again, no pausing on their faces to see how they feel about this. And it made me think of The Empire Strikes Back.
Sure.
And I was like, man, you think of that it's not as flashy, but the lightsaber battle in that movie is about a boy who is not ready. And like this dark figure, but he is willing to confront them because he wanted to go and save his friends. And he gets his ass handed to him, right? And then you have the third film, Return of the Jedi, and they confront one another again, but now he is a Jedi, and he comes so close to being able to kill his father and cuts off his hand and sees that they're the one and the same, and he has mercy. And I was like, none of that. There is none of that during this. It's just this nicely choreographed kind of thing with no emotion and no focusing on how anyone is feeling in this moment. And like, it's just like what could be applied to this. And it's just so hollow.
Spoiler.
And just to add to that, I mean, because I went with my 3 older kids, and the final battle, the way in which it culminates, which involves like throwing a trident exactly dead center, and it destroys another trident or whatever the hell, right?
Yeah.
And just like that, and Mikko, he's just like, well, that was easy.
You know what? I'm going to throw a spoiler thing in here before this, so we can get into this. But yes, I turned to my brother and I go, "Why did that work?
Yeah.
Why did his trident fight the thing that is like the ultimate power trident? Like just because he's the good guy, I guess, and like it's time for the movie to end? Like I don't understand why that worked."
I think the problem is we don't have a sense of what this Lost Kingdom, like, other than just being a bunch of CGI stuff. Like, what is it? What does it represent?
Yes.
Who is Kordax? Why is that a threat? Like, yes. I think we have Kordax. He possesses Black Manta, and then he possesses Orm. And I think that moment, it really works when Aquaman is like, no, he talks him down, right?
Mm-hmm.
I really liked that as a culmination of that storyline. But I'm just like, we needed a sense of who Kordax is.
Yeah.
And why Aquaman. Like that should have been the end of level boss, and not just, let me just throw this thing dead center and then blow up the Death Star,
I totally agree. I mean, I would have loved that. I mean, it does happen, but with a little more context, having this person who has been wronged by Aquaman becoming consumed by hate so much that he's willing to like deal with dark magic to defeat him
and destroy the world.
Yeah, like that's really interesting. And then Aquaman having to culminate in like an apology.
Yeah.
And having that, you could still have it end the way that it does, and it maybe Mantis never comes back from the darkness. But like, yeah, just if that had been rooted more in personal sorts of things versus like this in the middle of the movie, all of a sudden, you have Patrick Wilson like, oh yeah, there's this Lord of the Rings sort of story happening also that I need to tell you about. Like,
yeah,
it just felt kind of tacked on. And
yes,
yeah. But it's funny, my brother, we had the same thought. We were talking about it afterwards. When he throws the trident at the Dark King, I don't know what you want to call him, and he catches it, I thought, oh, it's not over. And my brother said he had the same thought. He's just like, oh no, he caught it. That was just probably like
another 15
more minutes. And that's not good.
I think for me, again, man, I loved Orm throughout this whole movie. Everything. There's the moment where Dolph Lundgren, where he's in trouble, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he turns to Orm for help, and Orm kind of just looks at him and goes away. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that was a good moment.
It was a good moment because I'm like, oh no, because I was like, oh, it felt like he was on a redemption arc,
Mm-hmm.
And then when he comes around, I was like, oh, good. Well, good. I'm good for you, Orm. That's good.
What made me laugh though? Because then, he had only given him an axe, right? Like sort of saying like, I don't trust you with like a gun. And then in that moment when Orm saves him, he like takes a gun out of a soldier's hand and gives it to Orm, and it's supposed to be heartwarming. But I was like picturing that soldier looking at his empty hands now, like, what? So, what am I supposed to do?
He hands him the little axe. There you go. That's
exactly. Yeah.
So what I was saying earlier, when we have like the kind of heartwarming scene at the beginning with Aquaman and his dad, it's like, here's to single dads or whatever. I was like, man, if they're doing another Blue Beetle thing where they kill off the dad, I'm going to be really upset.
No, not having
right.
It. Yeah.
So I was glad they didn't do that, but I did again. The weirdness of not having mom and dad together really struck me as odd for more of the film.
Yeah. Sorry, you just reminded me too, because I think you sense there's a lot of ADR in this movie, kind of holding it together, and there was that sort of funny moment where the dad got attacked. And he's laying on the ground, seemingly dead, but over someone's shoulder without seeing their mouth. It's like, it's okay. He's alive. Like I wondered if they had killed him and people were like, no, and they had to fix it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised by that at all.
Yeah.
So again, sorry, no, go ahead.
Well, no, you reminded me of something when you were talking about the beginning. A moment I really did like that felt kind of emotional and sweet was when Aquaman sees his son controlling the fish in the tank. I was like, oh, that's nice. And I like the beginning. Actually, the beginning felt like the perfect calibration of his sort of dude bro-ness, where he's excited to tell his son about an adventure he was on, and he's using those action figures.
Yeah.
Like that stuff, I thought, yeah, that was fun. That was cute. And it's fun. He's excited to tell his son about his day job, and then bonding with his son. Like, you're like me. We can share this together. Like that was a really promising start for me.
Yeah. It feels like they had designs on something a little bit more epic, and they may have just sort of cut their losses and been like, let's just get something that's about 2 hours.
And that's a bummer. I mean, I'm. It's so messy. You don't know who to blame, but it's like I don't want to just put this all on the filmmakers because I'm sure they had a lot of forces working against them, particularly with this universe coming to an end and knowing that like Michael Keaton at some point was going to make an appearance and like what?
I was thinking about that, so I was like, show us the Michael Keaton scene, please.
I know, may as well at this point.
That we're talking about the Flash. I'm like, you should have just friggin' left the original Michael Keaton ending. Like, I don't mind the George Clooney thing that they did, but just like give us a little bit more. It doesn't matter, so who cares,
Yeah, so give us what the filmmakers originally wanted. Why overthink it?
Now that said, Brian, I first of all, I predicted this thing was going to tank several months ago. I was like, I don't think Aquaman is going to perform.
Sure.
However, this has been a year of 4 flops. It's a clean sweep.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say you have to partly attribute that to James Gunn making his big, hey, everything that counts starts in a year or whatever announcement that he made.
At the beginning of the year, I would not have known how to, my feelings on that, but I 100% agree.
Right? I mean, it sure feels like it. It feels like the audience is like, okay, well, whatever then. We don't care now.
Especially with this being the end.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like, well, to what end? For what? Like, let's just move on. If you've moved on, then we're ready to move on.
And the universe ends with Patrick Wilson eating a cockroach.
Yeah,
I don't know what that's a metaphor for.
I will say the good thing that came out of it was they kept mentioning a burger and a beer several times throughout the movie. So my brother and I, we literally were like, burger and a beer. And so we walked over right out of the movie just to go get dinner.
What's funny is when the movie ended, I was at the boys. I was like, hey, you guys want to go to Ray's Crab Shack? I was in the mood to see. They're like, no. I was like, fine, let's just go home then.
That's hilarious.
Oh, by the way, so the fine, like the scene before the credits where Aquaman is doing his speech to the world.
Yeah.
That felt like, hey, let's just stick Momoa in front of a green screen, right?
100%.
Right?
Yes.
And it was very weird because I was like, this is like the end of your universe.
Uh-huh.
And he's just like, I'm Aquaman. Woo! I'm like, oh, okay.
Didn't it literally feel like everybody had gone home and there was like the director, a camera, Momoa, and they're like, just do whatever you want. Like, all right, so now the world's emerged. I'm Aquaman. Wah! And then, it jumps into the water. Like, it really did feel like an outtake.
They should have had Disturbed play at the end.
Yes. At least give me that.
Yeah, I was trying to, because remember that Keaton thing, and then they supposedly reshot it with Ben Affleck, remember?
Uh-huh, yeah.
And I'm like, where would that have even fit? I'm just genuinely curious,
Man, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, there we go. So that's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom.
Yep.
Ends the DCEU not with a whimper, but with a crunchy cockroach.
Yeah. Cockroach burger sandwich, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Next time we'll be talking about a DC movie is going to be like 2025, I think, right?
Wow. Yeah, but you know what? It's going to come quicker than we think. And at one point in the third act, I don't even remember what happened, but Aquaman was like, I'm going to call a friend, some sort of line like that. And I was like, man, it'd be so cool if it was Superman.
Oh, sure.
I really wish it was Superman. But so I can't wait for the Superman.
Hopefully brighter days are ahead for the DC movie universe, and hopefully I think again 2023 has been kind of a reckoning for superhero films, and even as somebody who loves comic books and loves superhero movies, even I'm like, I can do with a breather.
Yeah, I honestly, it might be just what the doctor ordered.
I'm like, just give me Kraven and I'll be fine. That's all I need. No, I'm just joking. No, I'm not looking for it.
I forgot about that. Oh man, next year is going to be rough, isn't it? I forgot.
Yeah, we got Madam Web, we got Kraven the Hunter, we got Venom 3. Holy shit, there's a lot. Yeah, in terms of like MCU, a Deadpool 3 is it, but but I think DC, I think Joker. That's the only thing that's coming out next year. I think. Right?
Very curious about that.
I'm guarded about that.
I love how like what Lady Gaga's in this. Like it.
I mean, it sounds bonkers. So I'm curious, but I still feel like you did not need to make a sequel to that first movie. So
I can't say I disagree, but I think that's the unknowability. Like I knew exactly what this was when I walked in. Like I already knew.
Sure.
We probably could have done this review without me having seen it.
Maybe we did. Maybe we did.
But Joker it's like a wild card. Like I have no idea what that's going to be, and that
it's a Joker card.
It's a Joker card. Jokers are wild. I got to admit, I'm a little excited about walking into a theater not knowing what to expect. That's cool.
When does that come out? Actually, I'm curious.
Probably like
do they have a release date for it?
Right?
October. Okay, so a little while yet, but we'll see. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But we'll have plenty of stuff to discuss in 2024 before we get there. So with that, Brian, I'm going to bring the curtain down on Movie Film 2023.
Wow, amazing.
Getting one out the door just before the big metal grate comes down.
Well, let me just say how thankful and grateful I am to have another year of this with you. This is truly a gift every single year. So
I couldn't agree more. And the fact that we're still doing this 282 episodes in. I mean, we are going to hit 300 probably in this coming year, I think, right?
And that's not including the commentaries. I mean, there's over 100 commentaries.
Almost 100. We're in the 90s.
Oh, okay, nice. Wow.
Yeah. So getting there. So we will hit commentary 100 this year, and probably episode 300 this year. So wow.
To celebrate.
Yeah, that's crazy. This coming year, I should say.
Yeah.
But hey, what did y'all think about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Let us know. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. If you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. I'm still posting at Twitter. I will never call it X. I'm riding that ship until it goes down, but I'm also on Threads and Instagram, etc. You can find me wherever. Also, if you're looking for some of my new writing, I got some cool stuff. I have my retrospective on Tombstone, which just went up at IGN a couple days ago. And I also did a little commentary piece for The Wrap about the new era of Doctor Who that is on Disney Plus now. So you can read that at The Wrap. So check those out. Brian, what about you? Anything worth mentioning?
Yeah, well, it wasn't intentional. I brought up Star Wars a lot this episode, but Young Jedi Adventures episodes I've written are up at Disney Plus, Disney Junior, the channel on cable.
And there we go. With that, on behalf of my partner Brian Hall, my name is Zaki Hassan. This has been Movie Film 282. We will catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome, friends. It's the Movie Film Podcast. Enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
Did you miss your deadline to renew your Medicaid coverage? you can still send your completed annual review form to Healthy Connections Medicaid. You may be assigned to another health plan, but you can ask to come back to First Choice within 60 days of renewed Medicaid eligibility. It's your family. It's your choice. First Choice is the right choice. Renew and choose us. Visit selecthealthofsc.com/renew to learn more.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.